I'm a little bit late. Maybe. Just a couple of days. Sorry. I'll quickly get it out of the way. Sorry I am late. Sorry I wasn't able to cover the Chinese Grand Prix this weekend, the 1000th Formula One race. I'm so glad I don't have to try and wrestle those words out of my mouth for the rest of the season. But as a lot of you know, I was away this weekend covering Formula E there at the track, so that was obviously my priority. And different time zones, that's a silly excuse, Dan. But yeah, all very chaotic. Formula One, unfortunately, had to be on the back burner this weekend. But luckily for me, probably not for you guys, but for me, luckily, wasn't the most exciting of races. Okay, the weekend had so much build-up, so much promise. We got new variations of liveries, new helmet designs. Of course, I love new helmet designs. That's right up my alley. But the race itself wasn't a classic, I would say. You know, it wasn't the almighty Formula One. Even the Bahrain Grand Prix, the race before, it wasn't quite at those sort of levels. So Let's rewind the clock a little bit. Going into this race, the 1000th race of the season, we had a Mercedes 1-2 in Melbourne. Ferrari threw away the race win in Bahrain. China, well, the weekend didn't start off looking so great, did it? Qualifying a 1-2 again for Mercedes, looking the dominant team this time, whereas in Bahrain, Ferrari were looking on top. Mercedes back on top with Bottas taking pole position, his first of the season. So at every race so far this year, we've seen a different pole sitter. Vettel, P3, Leclerc, P4. Then behind those two with the two Red Bulls, then the two Renaults, then the two Haas cars. Very boring. Further down the grid, a little bit more exciting. The two Toro Rosso cars were looking good early on in the weekend, but Albon, big crash in FP3. Couldn't get it through into qualifying. Giovinazzi as well didn't post a qualifying time. So, Williams weren't on the back row whatsoever. Progress for that team, perhaps. That's probably fairly generous, isn't it, saying progress for Williams? But they will probably see that as a bonus. So going into the race, we weren't expecting anything magical, I suppose. We were hoping that maybe strategy would be able to play a part, but realistically, Mercedes looking like they were going to be dominant, and that's exactly how the race played out. First lap, we saw a few changes. Further up the field, Hamilton took the lead over Bottas. Bottas didn't really at any point in the race look like he was going to be able to get back to Hamilton, challenge Hamilton. Behind those, Leclerc managed to slip in front of Vettel, and again, that was the sort of lap one thing where you're thinking, oh, this could get a little bit close. Verstappen and Gasly and Ricciardo had a nice little fight in there as well, but really it was a pretty spaced out race, and we saw contact between the McLarens and Kvyat on the opening lap. That was juicy to see some cars, a few wheels up in the air, almost screwed over those three guys' race. But apart from that, wasn't anything crazy, and it was actually Verstappen and Red Bull who, to be honest, if they hadn't tried some risky strategies and hadn't tried to mix up some of the different strategies of Ferrari, I think this race could have been quite boring. Max coming in early caused this almost concertina effect that caused the Ferraris to stop, then that almost changed Mercedes' plans, so that all went nicely together. But apart from that, an incredibly straightforward day for Mercedes. 3 1-2s in a row. This hasn't been done since the 90s from Williams. I think 1992 was the last time that the first three races of the season were 1-2 finishes. Hamilton also takes the lead of the championship now with this result, but surprisingly enough, Vettel's first podium this weekend wasn't one done without any controversy, that's for sure. Team orders played a huge part in this weekend's race, and it's something that I think I actually have a slightly differing opinion than quite a few people, so we'll talk about that in a moment. But this is your full race result list. The two Mercedes with a 1-2, then Vettel. Verstappen managed to wiggle his way into P4 once again, exactly like Bahrain. The top five were, except the two Ferraris are swapped around. Leclerc P5. Gasly getting into Q3 for the first time this season, also getting a top 6 finish for the first time this season, also picked up the fastest lap. Daniel Ricciardo getting best of the rest in P7. We'll go through the rest of the order in a moment, and actually I'm going to do today's rundown of the race weekend a little bit differently, a little bit like how I did some of my videos covering last season, where I go through the result and talk about each sort of driver and sort of what went down in their particular race. So, the man on screen, Lewis Hamilton's 75th Formula 1 race win, the 1000th Grand Prix, a very straightforward weekend for him. His teammate Bottas, who really had that incredible high of Melbourne, went back to the 2018 Bottas in Bahrain, comes back to China straight on the ball. Pole position, faster than Lewis all weekend, but as Hamilton so often does, when it matters, he really just lays all his cards on the table and gets the job done. Bottas comes away from China, I think, a little disappointed, but he's still in the hunt for the championship, comfortably ahead of this man, Sebastian Vettel, comfortably ahead of Sebastian Vettel's teammate, Charles Leclerc. So I think overall, Bottas will be disappointed, but more happy than these guys. You can see Vettel's face there. Yes, he's happy with P3, but he still knows a lot of work to do at Ferrari. They have a car that will win races this season, will get a second place at some point this season, but for 3 races on the bounce, have had to manage team orders. And we knew at some point this year there were going to be headaches at Ferrari. There were going to be obstacles that they were going to have to try and overcome very quickly. Did we expect Charles Leclerc to be causing issues in the first 3 races of the season? Probably not. Even the biggest of Charles Leclerc fans, I didn't expect, or probably didn't expect, for him to be quicker than Vettel in the closing stages in Melbourne, then trying to pass him for the lead in Bahrain and doing it before he should have, really. And then in this time out in China, having to move out of the way for Vettel, causing the team a lot of headaches, saying that, you know, guys, I'm quicker. I'm not really too sure he was. Vettel, in my opinion, was the quicker over the entire weekend. And actually in the race, yes, Vettel didn't sprint off ahead, but we know both, when Leclerc was ahead of Vettel, he said, oh, I'm saving tyres. And I think that's all Vettel was doing. I think they just switched almost the positions around. So I don't think it was needed. I really don't. And I think it really reminded me of Kimi Räikkönen from last season, where Verstappen tried a little bit of a different strategy and Red Bull caught out Ferrari because Ferrari had to put all their chips into Vettel. They couldn't manage the 2 guys at the same time, so Red Bull being really clever by doing that. Verstappen getting that P4, they will be chuffed with that, and a day where really it should have been P5 and 6. Gasly, that's what he needed this weekend. He wasn't close to Verstappen, sure, but getting that 6th place, this is all he needs to do for this season. The team have been more than open in the fact that they're saying that he probably wasn't ready to be in a top seat in Formula 1 just yet. That has shown in the first few races, but 6th place, if he can do that for the rest of the season, that's great. That's what he needs to do. That is his role. Ricciardo finally finishing a race, finally getting his first points for Renault and best of the rest. That's what his role is for the rest of the season, so he can only be happy with that. Perez, a really strong race from Sergio Perez, I felt, in a car which, again, has been struggling this season, especially in qualifying trim. Once you get onto Sunday, that car has actually shown some good race pace, staying ahead of Kimi Räikkönen. Both of those guys, actually, Perez and Räikkönen, really, really racy, which was great to see. Helped by the fact that the 2 Haas cars just went backwards. That made me very upset, of course. Grosjean getting the best of Magnussen. Magnussen, actually, on the last 2 races, has gone miles back. Really just looked nowhere, Kevin Magnussen, in the last 2 races. Grosjean managed to finally finish a race, so that was thumbs ups from me, but no points once again. He has no points yet so far this season, but 2 DNFs in the first 2 races. Carlos Sainz also, he was another one who's had 2 DNFs in the first 2 races. He was behind the 2 Haas cars. Stroll actually split the 2 Haas cars, overtaking Magnussen on the final lap, but Sainz, McLaren, a race to forget. We knew coming into China this wasn't going to be a circuit that suited them. We found that out very quickly in qualifying, even quicker in the race with that incident with Danny Kvyat. Very lucky to get that car going again, Lando Norris. He eventually did retire. Sainz to get another one. He could have retired, but kept on plodding along. Like Grosjean, no points so far this season. In a car that has been capable of points, you know, it's not been miles away, but both of them will be sure that they're just happy to finish, I would say. And then right at the back, Giovinazzi and the two Williams cars. Once again, Russell having the edge over Kubica. Driver of the day, I have to agree with the official result. This doesn't happen very often, but Alex Albon starting in the pit lane, getting all the way up to P10, getting that single point, which I know it's just a point, but it can make all the difference. Cracking job from the English-born driver. A lot of people like to say that, but he is a Thai driver under a Thai licence. Cracking race. Really putting himself on the Formula 1 map this season. Raikkonen I've put in second and Perez in third. Race rating, I've only gone with a 4 out of 10. A little bit of a dull affair in this one, and even picking my driver of the day, Albon was the clear favourite. Raikkonen I thought was really racy, but that was only really in the first half of the race. And Perez, that was more of just a surprise that he was able to keep that car comfortably in the top 10. Apart from that, for me, I look back at Melbourne, which I gave a 5 out of 10, and this race wasn't better than Melbourne, in my personal opinion. But I'd love to know in the comments below, who was your driver of the day? What is your race rating for the 1000th Formula 1 Grand Prix? And this is how your championship looks at the moment. Somewhat surprisingly, Mercedes just walking away with it in a season where we thought Ferrari were going to be the big boys, the top dogs. Mercedes proving why they have won the last 5 championships comfortably. 68 points for Hamilton, 62 for Bottas. Verstappen holding it in at third. Holding in there at third. It's been the same 3 that have been in the top 3 so far this season. Ferrari hoping to change that next time out in Baku, a circuit which I think will actually suit Ferrari quite nicely, so that hopefully will mix things up a little bit in 2019. In the next few days you will see your winners and losers video going through our fantasy league, talking about who are the big winners and the big losers from China. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.